All right, so we're back for another deep dive, and today things are getting pretty interesting, I think. We're talking about 3D modeling,
Ooh.
but not just any 3D modeling. This is like next level stuff.
Uh-huh.
We're diving into a research paper on something called LLaMA-Mesh.
Yeah, LLaMA-Mesh has really got me thinking.
Yeah.
It's it's really cool how they've managed to combine language models
Right.
with 3D design. It's almost like you can have a conversation with the computer
Wow.
and I'll sculpt something for you.
So wait, you're telling me that I wouldn't even need to learn all that complicated 3D modeling software?
Potentially, yeah.
I could just like say, "Hey, computer, make me I don't know, like a spaceship," and it would just like
That's the idea.
goof appear.
Yeah, and they actually have an example in the paper where they have making a sword. Someone's like, hey, I want to make a sword for a game set in ancient times. And the system can actually start asking questions like, okay, well, what type of sword?
Oh, wow.
What are the details? What's the style? So
Yeah. So it's not just taking orders blindly, it's actually like understanding
it's getting
the
them.
nuance of what you're trying to design.
Yeah, it's definitely getting them.
I'm already hooked. But how does it actually work? How do you translate words into like a tangible object?
Right. So instead of trying to teach the language model this whole new language of shapes and stuff, they use something called the OBJ file format, which is kind of like a text-based recipe for a 3D model.
Yeah.
And it lists like the coordinates of all the points and
Yeah.
how to connect them.
Okay, so it's kind of like translating what I want into a language that the computer already gets, right?
Exactly.
But there's got to be more to it than that, right? It can't just be plugging in coordinates.
Well, you're right. And here's the fascinating part. A lot of these large language models that you've probably been hearing all about,
Right.
they already have this basic understanding of OBJ files.
What?
Yeah. They've probably encountered them in like online code repositories and stuff.
Oh.
And just through sheer exposure, they've kind of absorbed this knowledge.
That is wild. So it's like they've been low-key learning about 3D modeling while browsing the internet.
That's one way to put it, yeah.
That's pretty cool. Okay, but creating a simple sword, that's one thing.
Right?
But how do you teach a system to handle more like complex designs with all their intricacies and variations?
Right. So for that, the training gets really interesting. They took one of these pre-existing LLaMA models and they fine-tuned it using a combination of approaches.
I'm going to guess they fed it a ton of examples.
Yeah.
Like flashcards, 3D models, and their descriptions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they paired text descriptions with existing 3D models so the system could start making those connections between the words and the shapes.
Makes sense.
But they didn't stop there.
Okay, so what else did they do? Like a virtual design school for AI?
Something like that.
Mhm.
They also used these interleaved text 3D dialogues, which is essentially like a back and forth conversation about a design.
Oh, wow.
So it's not just learning vocabulary, it's learning the flow of a design conversation.
Yeah.
Like how to brainstorm, how to refine, how to really nail down a concept.
That's super impressive.
It is. And to make sure it could handle these conversations, they use data sets like Objeverus, which has tons of 3D models, and UltraChat, which is more focused on like general conversation skills.
So this thing can hold a conversation about design and then create the 3D model based on that conversation.
That's the goal.
Okay, I gotta see some results now. Can it actually produce like good-looking 3D models?
Yeah, that's the really exciting part. The results are actually pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
LLaMA-Mesh generates models that are surprisingly diverse and detailed. Like they show on the paper how it can create all these different styles of benches just from simple descriptions.
Okay, so we're not talking about like just basic shapes. This is some real design complexity.
Yeah,
I'm picturing custom furniture, intricate video game assets, all that.
absolutely. And what's really cool is that it still keeps its strong language capabilities. It can still hold a conversation, understand complex instructions, and even like explain its design choices.
This is amazing. It's like a true blend of language and 3D creation.
Yeah.
But I know there's always got to be limitations, especially with something this cutting edge.
Right.
What are the challenges here? What are we bumping up against?
Well, one of the limitations is that it struggles with really, really complex models.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to those large language models we were talking about.
Okay.
They have something called a context length, which is basically how much information they can process at once.
Right. So it's like if you tried to write a novel on a sticky note,
Yeah.
there's just not enough space.
Exactly. So you can create super detailed components, but like designing a whole skyscraper might be a bit too much right now.
Okay. So size limitations.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
What else? Another limitation comes from what's called the quantization process. Basically, to simplify things, they round off the coordinates of the 3D model, which can make you lose a tiny bit of detail.
So like compressing a high-res image,
Yeah,
you save space, but maybe things get a little blurry.
exactly. But even with these limitations, the potential is just groundbreaking. It's really pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible with both language models and 3D design.
It really is.
It makes you wonder, what's next?
Yeah. It really makes you wonder where this is all headed, you know? Like what happens when anyone can just create a 3D model just by describing it?
It is kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. Like,
Yeah.
on the one hand, imagine a student just being able to design something for their science project, you know, just by talking to their computer.
Right.
Or someone with limited mobility being able to create like custom tools or assistive devices that fit their needs perfectly.
Yeah. The potential for accessibility is huge.
Yeah.
It could really level the playing field when it comes to design.
But what about professional designers?
Yeah.
I mean, if anyone can create complex 3D models, does that mean their skills are obsolete?
That's a good question. And it's one that comes up whenever new technology comes along.
Yeah.
Think about photography, for example.
Yeah.
It didn't replace painting altogether, right? It became its own art form.
With its own skills and aesthetics and all that.
So you're thinking 3D modeling with AI could become a specialized skill in itself.
Yeah, like knowing how to best communicate with the system,
Right.
how to refine the output,
Yeah.
how to blend those AI-generated elements with human creativity.
You'd be like this powerful collaboration almost.
Exactly.
AI doing the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
And then the human designer brings that artistic vision and expertise.
And imagine being able to prototype and iterate on designs so quickly,
Yeah.
exploring all these possibilities before you even open up traditional 3D modeling software.
It's like unlocking a whole new level of creativity.
Totally.
But we have to talk about the potential downsides too, right? With any powerful technology, there's always that risk.
Of course.
Could this lead to like a flood of low quality 3D models? Or even worse, could someone use this to create like deceptive or harmful content?
Yeah, that's a really important point.
Yeah.
I mean, we've already seen the issues with misinformation and deepfakes with images and videos.
Yeah.
Imagine someone creating hyper-realistic 3D models for propaganda
Oh, wow.
or spreading false information through seemingly authentic objects.
That's a scary thought.
It is.
It's a good reminder that technology is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or bad.
Exactly.
It's up to us to use it responsibly and ethically and to start thinking about safeguards and guidelines early on.
Absolutely. It's a conversation that needs to involve everyone. Developers, policymakers, ethicists, the public. We all need to be shaping the future of this technology.
For sure. But we can't let those challenges overshadow the incredible potential here.
Right.
This ability to just talk to a computer and have it generate a 3D model
Yeah.
that opens up so many doors across so many fields.
Think about education, for instance. Students could visualize complex concepts in 3D.
Oh, yeah,
It would make learning so much more engaging.
totally. And the research paper also talks about applications in healthcare,
Oh, yeah. Healthcare is huge.
where doctors could use patient-specific 3D models for diagnosis and treatment planning. That could lead to some really personalized and effective care.
Absolutely. And you can't forget about robotics and virtual reality. Being able to quickly generate 3D models would be a game changer for those fields.
It's like we're giving everyone a universal design toolkit,
Exactly.
empowering them to create and innovate in ways we haven't even thought of yet.
It's just the beginning. We're just scratching the surface of what's possible.
It's exciting and a little bit mind-boggling at the same time,
I know.
but it's a future I'm really looking forward to seeing unfold. And who knows, maybe one day we'll all be designing our own 3D masterpieces just by talking to our computers.
Wouldn't that be something? It would truly democratize design
Yeah.
and unleash a wave of creativity unlike anything we've seen before.
You know, we've talked about all those amazing applications for LLaMA-Mesh, but what really gets me is what it says about language itself.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we usually think of language as this way to communicate ideas,
Right, right.
but with this, it's almost like language is shaping reality.
Yeah.
Taking our words and turning them into actual 3D objects.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's a huge shift. It's like we're not just describing the world anymore. We're actually creating it with language.
It makes you wonder what other creative boundaries we can push with language.
Right.
I mean, we've seen AI write poetry, compose music, even generate code.
Yeah, it's incredible.
What if we could use language to design entire cities
Wow.
or even ecosystems?
Now you're talking. That's getting me excited.
Yeah.
I mean, we're already getting used to talking to our devices, you know,
Right.
voice assistants, chatbots, but this takes that interaction to a whole other level.
Definitely. It's like creation is becoming more intuitive more accessible,
Yeah.
and maybe even more collaborative as we learn to work with AI to bring our ideas to life.
So for all our listeners out there, let's put this into practice. If you could design anything just by describing it, what would it be? Some revolutionary gadget.
Ooh.
A mind-blowing work of art.
If you want to see what's possible,
Yeah.
I definitely recommend checking out the visual examples in the paper,
Oh, yeah.
especially figures 3 and 11.
Yeah.
They show just how much range and detail LLaMA-Mesh can handle.
It's really impressive.
Let those images spark your imagination.
Exactly. Think about the problems you could solve, the stories you could tell, the beauty you could create. The power is literally on the tip of your tongue.
That's a great way to put it.
And remember, this is just the beginning. AI is constantly changing, evolving.
Always moving.
Who knows what other mind-blowing tech is right around the corner?
We'll be here to break it all down for you, though, so don't worry.
Exactly. Keep those imaginations going, and we'll catch you on our next deep dive into the awesome world of AI. Until then, stay curious.